and welcome back to American Frontline Nurses. And I am Julia, and we've got Nicole. And
Hey guys.
She has got her daughter in the background.
She's currently removing the backing off of every command strip.
So it's going to be another fun night tonight, guys. We are going to be discussing, and I'm going to put on my glasses, botulism and canning. So it's something I've been doing a lot of lately is canning, and I know Nicole's been doing a lot of it. She's actually been doing quite a bit more, I think, than I have in the recent past couple of months. My husband's been doing most of the canning. So we're going to just dive in and ask questions if you guys have any. This is something that we've been working on ourselves, is learning how to be more self-sufficient. And we want to bring some tips and tricks to you guys and let you guys know what we've been up to, and then also what the warnings to watch out for. So we've put up a blog this afternoon, and so we'll have that on our website. And Nicole, do you want to go ahead and show the blog so that everybody can see it? And she's on mute because she's got the kids tonight.
My husband always conveniently is busy right when the podcast has to start. Yeah. Always.
Mine's out in the shop right now, so hopefully he doesn't pop in.
Right. So guys, I just want to remind everyone that when you search us up and you type in the URL, you have to make sure to use American frontlinenurses.org.com. It doesn't matter. But if you hover over the educate tab, especially if you're using your phone, just hover over it. And you'll see right under it, menu bar pops up, and it's Tales from the Bedside blog. And if you go there, this is where we have all of our blog posts. And we decided to talk about, in this blog post, botulism poisoning. Just because there are so many new canners out there, so many new people with hobby gardens, we wanted to cover that, and then a whole bunch of other things in today's podcast about canning. For safety, things that you may not know. And Julia's going to go over that with you guys. And I'm just going to man the behind the scenes. My internet's slow.
Mine is slow as well. And I'm in the kitchen tonight, so I can, I pulled some stuff out of stuff that we've done, some recent canning stuff that we've done. But Nicole is pulling up the blog post right now. So the main thing that we did the blog post on is how to avoid botulism. And this is something that a lot of people, they don't talk about it very much, especially if you're in any of the canning groups. I know Nicole and I are both in a couple, they're rebel canning groups, and they do things kind of against the grain. So if you have the ball book, and I meant to grab it, I don't have it in front of me right now. But if you have the ball book, they'll say in there what not to do and how to do different canning things. The rebel canning groups, they kind of tweak things a little bit. So you have to be careful. And this is something that we want to make sure that you guys are aware of, especially if you're doing a lot of recipes from the rebel canning group.
We're not going to tell you what to can and how to can, but we are going to tell you what could possibly happen if you do shit wrong.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and trust me, I mean, I'm a culprit myself, but I know what to watch for. And so does Nicole.
I'm going to try the new Alfredo sauce recipe that I found in there.
I want to try that one as well. And
yeah, I'll let you know how it goes.
I've made my own caramel, and that is really good. And it's amazing what you can do. And that's a recipe in there. And I forget the name of it, but if you look up homemade caramel in the Rebel Canning group, it's really good. And it's super easy to make. But with our blog, we start out with what is botulism. And botulism is a rare but deadly illness that's caused by toxins, and it's Clostridium toxins. There's 3 different types, and the bacteria can produce foods, wounds, and intestines of infants. And it's not something that you can smell or really even see. So that's where we want to make sure that you guys know what to watch out for, and make sure that the conditions are, when you're doing your canning, you're doing it properly. If you're water bathing, you want to make sure that you're water bathing things for the right amount of time. If you're pressure canning, you want to make sure that you're pressure canning for the right amount of time, and then also for the right pressure. I know where I'm at, I'm closer to sea level, so usually 10 pounds of pressure is fine for me. But where Nicole is at, she has to do things at closer to 15 pounds of pressure and for a longer amount of time. So you definitely want to pay attention to your elevation and the amount of time that you are, if you're using the pressure canner. And also be very careful, just using the pressure canner. I know, and this is again, I do sometimes do stuff that, goes against traditional canning. I have a glass top stove, and that's not the best. They say not. Yeah, they say not.
The FDA would frown upon all of us, but
but I mean, be safe. If you have, cracks in if you have cracks in it or anything, do not use a glass top stove if you have cracks in it with a canner. You're also not supposed to use cast iron skillets or cast iron on your glass stove top as well. I use it, but I have a brand new stove. My stove is like 2 years old, so I don't worry about it. Now, my old stove that I had, I would have never put cast iron or a heavy canner on it, because when we're canning things, I've got, this is pickles. Sorry, I've got blur on my camera, but this is pickles that my husband did last week, and he did like 8 of them in the canner. So let me just tell you, 8 quarts of pickles in the canner with all the water in there. That was a heavy canner. So that's definitely something you want to think about when you're canning.
My favorite is when you guys did tuna.
I've got the tuna right here. Oh, do I have a story about tuna? But yes, you can can your own tuna. My husband caught, oh gosh, I don't even remember how many pounds of tuna it was, but he went fishing, deep sea fishing, and brought home 5 huge tunas. They were huge bluefin tuna, and he came home and he canned, like, not all of it, but he canned a good amount of it. So let me just tell you, canning tuna inside the house stinks. And it stinks bad. I highly recommend, if you're going to can tuna, do it outside. Just do it outside. And you want to make sure that you are doing it for the right amount of time. Because meat, if you're going to do something like a salsa, you can do it in like 10 or 15 minutes, depending on the recipe and the size cans you're doing or the jars that you're doing. But if you're doing meat, it's anywhere from 75 minutes to 90 minutes, depending on the type of meat. Chicken doesn't take as long as beef does, and fish is a little bit different. So you definitely want to pay attention to the directions on how to can meat. I've also done chicken broth. This is something that I do quite frequently. We buy whole chickens. My husband, he breaks them down, and we put the parts in the freezer, and then I take all the bones, because he does the skinless, boneless breasts and thighs. I take the bones, the backbone, all the parts of the chicken, so nothing goes to waste with the chicken. And then I make bone broth with that. I can do it in the pressure cooker, or I can do it in, sometimes I'll do it in the Instapot. Just depends on what I feel like doing, or I'll do it in the slow cooker. And I can usually get anywhere from 4 to 6 pints of chicken broth. And then I, follow the directions on how to do that. And it's like 10 minutes, I believe, once it comes up to pressure. If I remember right, I did that one last week. So it doesn't take very long at all to do chicken broth. The longest time is processing it yourself if you're going to make your own chicken broth. But with botulism, you definitely want to make sure that you know the warning signs of this. The botulism toxin that attacks the body, it attacks the nerves and causes difficulty in breathing, muscle paralysis, and it can even cause death. You can't see it, you can't smell or taste it. Even a small taste of food containing the toxin can be very deadly. The conditions that the pores like best is low oxygen or no oxygen environment, low acid pH, low sugar, low salt, certain temperature ranges, and a certain amount of water. So with home canning and botulism, home canned vegetables are the most common causes of botulism in the U.S. Between 1996 and 2014, there was 210 outbreaks of foodborne botulism. With 145 cases, 30% or 30% or 43 cases occurred because home canners did not follow the canning instructions, or they did not use a pressure canner, ignored the signs of food spoilage, or they didn't know that they could get botulism from improperly preserving vegetables. So these are things you want to be very, very careful with when you're doing home canning, especially if you've never, a lot of people are starting to can, for the first time this year, and you want to be very, very careful with it. Another thing that you want to make sure you're watching out for is the vinegar. Nicole's got a link. I've got you can't see it again because of the blur, but this is food grade. This is vinegar for canning, and it's 5%. Recently, I've noticed a lot of people saying that when they go to get vinegar, is that they're finding 4% vinegar. And 4% vinegar is not food. It's not food safe. So you want to make sure that when you pick up your vinegar at the store, if you're going to be using anything with vinegar in it, that you get the 5%, because that is the percentage that you need to be able to can food, especially if you're going to be doing just like these are canned peppers where they're not pressure cooked. So they're just, my husband does these all the time. He takes peppers from our garden and then he makes his own. So it's just a vinegar based solution that he makes with sugar and a couple different things. I think it's salt. I forget exactly what the recipe is for it, but definitely, like, if he were to make this with the 4%, this would be something that would be very, very bad, because the lower the acid, the more chances of botulism you can have. So we'll put that link, and actually Nicole's already put the link in the chat for you for the warning signs on the vinegar, and make sure that when you do get vinegar for canning that it is the 5%, because anything below 5% may result in your canned food going bad, and then you won't even know that it's gone bad, and you can actually cause your botulism just from using the wrong type of vinegar. Other things that you want to watch out for when you're canning, low acid foods. So asparagus, green beans, beets. This is, we've done beets. And so when we make sure that when we're doing them, we're using the proper vinegar. Corn, potatoes, some tomatoes, figs, all meats, fish, and seafood. So those are 9 different things that are low acid foods that you want to make sure that when you're canning those items, that you can them properly. Again, with the tomatoes, this is a red salsa. And then we've also made like a chili verde type salsa, the green tomatillo salsa. So both of those have vinegar in the recipes, and we're using the 5% vinegar to make sure that we're using the proper vinegar on that. So it's just, there's a lot of little things that people don't think about. And if you're just running into the grocery store to grab vinegar, it would be super easy to grab the wrong vinegar, and you could actually cause a lot of issues if you were to grab the wrong vinegar. So let me get out of it. I love these pop-ups that come up when you're trying to go through the website. So another vinegar is apple cider vinegar that a lot of people use as well. So you want to make sure that if you're grabbing an apple cider vinegar, that it is the 5% vinegar. So that is on the vinegar. And then to avoid botulism, you want to make sure that you're carefully following the directions. You're using a pressure canner for low acid foods. So you don't want to water bath things that are going to be a low acid food. So those 9 different things that I had already went through, I personally would not water bath any of those. If it was me, I would make sure that I was using a pressure canner. And I believe, Nicole, do you have the link for the pressure canners to show them? Because there's a lot of people just think that, you can just water bath everything, but you can't. Nicole, if you don't have the link, I can definitely pull up the one that we've got. And there's, you can get a pressure canner for, $50 to $70, or you can spend upwards to $500, depending on what you want to do. We have one of the Presto ones. It's not a big one. I think it's like a 16 quart one that we have. I've got the Walmart. I'll drop this in the chat. This is the one that I believe we've got, or it's a similar one to this. I'll send you the link, Nicole, so you can add that on the screen. Or maybe you've already got it. Yep. That's a little bit bigger than the one that we have, but you definitely want to make sure that you're using something that has the locking lid when you're using the pressure canner, to make sure that you're doing it properly. And then the water bath, you can almost do, as long as you have enough water to cover. You want to make sure that you've got 2 inches or more. It's usually about, depending on the size of the jars, you want to make sure you've got a good 2 inches of water above. And it's cold food goes into cold water. Hot food goes into hot water. That's another common mistake that happens. So this is a water bath. So you would, if you have a container like this, you would not be able to do pressure cooking. So you would not want to do meats in this. I would not do any tomato base in that. Pickles you can water bath. You can water bath peppers. I would not do beets in a water bath. I would make sure that you're doing a pressure cooker to do those types of things. So anything that's a low acid type food, you want to make sure that you're doing pressure cooking for that. And then also follow the directions for the type of food that you're using. There's many different websites that you can get. I mean, I Google stuff. My husband's like, "Oh, let's can this weekend," and I'll Google it up because I'm like, "Okay, is it something that needs to be water bathed? Or that can be water bathed? Is it something that needs to be pressure cooked?" And you're gonna find things fairly quickly if you do a quick Google search on how to do it. And then also with your elevation, it'll give you the time to add additional time, and then also add additional pressure depending on your elevation. So do not use electric or multi-cooker appliances like an Instapot. Instapots are not canners. They do make electric canners, pressure cookers. I've never used one. I've always just used the manual ones that require the water in it. So I don't know, the ins and outs about those, but I definitely, before I purchased one of those, I would definitely, do your research on that. But do not use an Instapot and think that it's going to be able to can something, because it does not. It cannot can. It cannot water bath. Now you can make, your chicken stock in it, but you do not, or even, your salsa, you could start your salsa in it, but you would not want to use an Instapot to be able to can or water bath. And pay attention to the processing times. So that's something you really want to make sure that you're paying attention to, is the processing times when you're canning. And that's how you're going to be able to make sure that it's, properly sealed. You always want to take it out. I usually let it sit in the canner for about 10 minutes before I pull it out, and then I put it on a towel on a chopping block to let it cool, and that way that it can sit there, and then you'll hear it pop. You'll hear the tops pop. If you have anything that has not popped, do not store that in your cupboard. Either eat it right away, or do a little research to see if you can recan it, because and always check. My husband's he always leaves the rings on, but always check to make sure that the top is secure, that it's not going to sit there and it's going to pop in your cabinet or in your cupboard. So you want to just make sure that you have proper seal. I personally do not reuse whenever we've canned something, we always will write, again, it's hard to see, we'll write on the top of it. So we don't ever reuse those lids. And that's just a marker, permanent. It's a Sharpie marker. It'll come off if you use like a magic eraser or some kind of a cleaner. That'll come off. But I never reuse, when I'm canning anything, I never reuse the lids. The rings you can reuse, that's fine as long as they're not rusty and dented. But with the sealed lids, I will never, I don't reuse these lids. You can use them, if you're storing something, like we store a lot of our, like our flour and, chocolate.
Have you
things.
tried they're called Tadler reusable lids for canning yet?
We haven't tried those. I've looked into them, but we have so many of these lids from, cleaning up my mother-in-law's house after she passed away, my grandfather's house. We've got, lids galore. So we use these, but I've seen those. I've not used them yet. Have you used those?
I used them for my water glassing my eggs because those didn't have to be processed. They just needed a cover. That way I could use the lids on like other stuff for canning. But I mean, they are like, I don't know, when you do so much canning, $15 for 12, it's like $1 per lid. I mean, over time, I'm sure they'll pay for themselves. But right now, I'm going to search up arts and crafts for canning lids.
Yeah, exactly.
But I did use like almost all of these for my water glassing my eggs.
That's good to know because I've not personally talked to anybody that's used those. So it's something that, we've just always used the ball or the cur, depending on which ones we've got. And we don't ever reuse those. That's just something, that's a tip that you'll see that in, the Rebel Canner chat will say that they're going, that they'll reuse them. I personally would not do that. That's just me.
If they have the right to bodily autonomy.
Yep, exactly.
I'm like, I ain't gonna comment on that one. Yeah. I mean, they have a right to do whatever they want to do. I mean, Julie and I aren't going to slap a cheeseburger out your hand. We're not slapping a cigarette out your hand. And we're not slapping the heroin needle out of your hand either.
We're just going to warn you what could happen
we're going to warn you what could happen though.
Yeah. If that were to happen. Another thing I've noticed in that group is, this is just a jar of Chinese barbecue sauce. But people will reuse these jars and the lids. Now, storing something, yes, I would not personally not recan something in one of these lids.
Because they did say the Atlas jars that the one particular brand of spaghetti sauce come in, the jars themselves can be reused because you can put a mason jar lid on top of them and can them.
Yep. Those jars
Atlas are for canning.
It's the Atlas jars, and I can't remember the brand. I don't know if I can't remember the brand that comes in those jars, but those jars can be
or something like that. But I think that's like a nurse educator.
I can't remember. It's not Prego because those are different jars, but I don't remember what brand it is because we make our own tomatoes, our own spaghetti sauce. But those jars can be the jars themselves can be reused because you can put a mason jar lid on those. But anything that
Classico, that's it.
Classico, that is it. Anything that has these types of jars, I personally would not trust the lids to reuse those in a canner or a water bather. Now storing stuff, when those jars are empty, then I will definitely store, sugar or something in there. But I definitely would not use that as a canning to be able to recan something for myself or to even give it away. And that's a lot of people I've seen have been talking about, making the homemade caramel sauce and doing the different, making different things for Christmas gifts this year. The money is tight this year. So a lot of people are looking, to do homemade type gifts. And I've done it myself. I made the caramel sauce last year and my family loved it. You want to make sure that you're doing it properly, especially if you're going to be giving it away, because you don't want to have that, if something were to happen, you don't want to you pass that mistake on to others. Somebody asked, I believe it was Laura, had asked about the treatment for botulism. So there's medications that can be used, and it depends on the symptoms, on how severe the symptoms are, whether you need to be hospitalized or not. But there's, the wonderful Alphabet Agency websites have that, and have all the information. It's an antitoxin, does not reverse paralysis, but it arrests its progression. So the medication it's a botulism antitoxin, should be administered as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So if
and
you
guys,
just,
botulism poisoning is not like tetanus, where when you get tetanus antitoxin, the tetanus goes away. It's more like polio, that by the time you get the antitoxin for botulism, whatever paralysis and damage has been done is there to stay. It doesn't reverse itself. It just stops it with what happens. It's not like tetanus.
It stops the progression. So there are some antibiotics, penicillin G, given IV every 4 hours, can help with it. However, with it, more and more people are becoming allergic to different medications, and penicillin is one of the main antibiotics that people are allergic to. So you want to be very careful, with the different antibiotics that they use in the hospitals if something were to happen. And Nicole, you've got your dogs coming to you, and now I've got mine because I'm sitting at the counter. I've got one nudging me. So another thing is, you do not want to use damaged or cracked mason jars. Discard any jars even if you're going to be storing, something that you're not canning in. Don't use a cracked mason jar, because you never know, one little bump and it could be a disaster. And if you've ever dropped one of these jars, even empty, they shatter. We have tile floor in our great room in our kitchen. The slivers, I've done it. I've dropped one of these, and it's like explosion of glass. If you've ever dropped a Pyrex dish on the floor, the tiny little slivers, it's so easy to get into your skin. Even if you're sweeping it up and you think you've got it all, it could be very, very bad if you were to step on it. And then a piece of glass, because they're so small, the piece of glass could go into your foot and embed, and you may not even know that it's there until you start having other issues with it. So definitely do not use any cracked mason jars. Sometimes you can have, the contents of the food inside looks completely fine, but you've got contaminated food inside. Sometimes you can see it. It just depends on what's going on, but you very rarely will see anything that, if you have botulism, you're not going to see it. You're not going to smell it. You're not going to taste it. So you want to be very careful with how you process everything. If anything, if you open up the lid and something, if it, like really pops, starts to foam, squirts liquid out, or anything like that, just pretty much consider it that it is contaminated, because something has been growing inside of there. Yeast, if anything that's discolored, moldy, if you open it up, it smells bad, automatically get rid of it. Do not even try to, say, oh, well, I'm going to cook it and it's going to be okay. No, just get rid of it. Save yourself the trouble, and save your family the trouble.
I'm in the Canning Rebels group, and somebody just pressure canned eggs. Technically it would work. They're still in the shell. They're like hard boiled now. I ain't gonna fuck around with that. I water glassed mine.
Yeah, I
know for a fact water glass works, because the old people in Eureka, they still have old cellars, like old food cellars, and they still do it. Like, I had known about that for years, and I'm like, that I will trust. I've never seen them do that. like pressure can their eggs, so I'm not going to try that one. I mean, more power to the people that want to try.
Erica just put a comment up saying my great grandmother would not can green beans because a whole family who lived across the street from them died from botulism from canning green beans. And I could actually see that, Erica. And green beans is number 2 on the low acid foods. We're still picking green beans in our garden, and we're not canning them. We either eat them fresh or they go in the freezer and then they go in the freeze dryer. And we're freeze drying the green beans. I would not can green
some
beans
before I knew what the hell I was doing. Now I'm afraid to eat them after what I wrote in that blog report. I'm like, damn it. It was the first thing carrots was the first thing I did. And then I did green beans. And I'm just like, shit, we're all going to die now because of the green beans, just like Erica's great grandmother's neighbors. So I'm gonna feed them to my chickens first and see what happens. They're gonna be my canaries.
Yeah, definitely let the chickens be the canaries in the coal mine with those green beans. Because if you did them when you didn't know what you were doing before, you definitely want to make sure that you've.
Well, remember all the times I was calling you because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I'm like, I'm going to start a simple. We're going to do green beans and carrots. You can't mess that up. Boom. Botulism from green beans. Carrots are fine. I would can carrots without a problem. Michael says freeze them. I know, but I've got 10 cans of green beans, and I grew up poor, and there were times when there just wasn't enough food to eat. So for me to throw food out stresses me out. Like, that's why I'm like, I'm going to just feed them to the chickens. That's why I love having chickens so much, because they're just auto recyclers. No food goes to waste, and I don't feel bad feeding them, all these scraps of food. So if they keel over, I know. I mean, I'm going to have to wait 18 to 36 hours to see if they die first.
But if one goes down after they eat them, then
not to eat them. God, how horrible. I know, because I didn't know what I was doing when I was canning. That's why I'm just like, I bought those books that you told me to do, and I did the green beans exactly how the Amish book said to do it. So, I mean, and I called you for clarification. So, I mean, they've got to be good. You know what? I'll send them to some coworkers I don't like.
I'm sure we have a list of people.
Halo.
Yep. But you definitely want to make sure that when you are doing low acid things that you follow the directions to the T. Again, we don't can our green beans. We've never canned asparagus. We've freeze dried them. And that's something that, if you guys let us know, if you guys want us to do a podcast on that, or even just a blog post on freeze drying, because that's something that my husband and I started doing last year. And it's amazing the amount of stuff we've started running out of room, because when we're doing salsa, I think he made like 20 cans of between red salsa and the green tomatillo salsa last week. And it's like, there's only so much room in the house to store all this stuff. Can't store it in the garage because it gets too hot here, and we don't have a cellar to be able to store it in. So we can what we can, and then we freeze dry other stuff. And I know Nicole has been talking about getting a freeze dryer as well, because of all the stuff that we've been able to do. So we're
saving up for one.
Yeah, they're not cheap, but
they're worth it.
And they're, in my opinion, they're worth it. Because if you do buy, especially with the food scarcity that's going on right now. What was it, today or yesterday? There was another like 58 tons. I don't even remember what.
Wiping out all the farms.
Yeah. The meat, there was a big, huge recall. I didn't read the whole article. I just saw that there was a recall for meat. And I know people can, ground beef. They can bacon. That's something that I want to try, is canning bacon.
I haven't tried the bacon yet.
That's something I've been looking, and that's something in the Rebel canners I've been looking. They can butter. That's supposed to be a no-no. I haven't done that yet.
They can cream cheese. I did not know you could do that.
Dairy stuff is one of those. It's one of those things that you want to be careful with, but it's not. approved by the 3-letter agencies from my understanding, but a lot of people do it. And Nicole's got the different groups in our blog. We've got the National Center for Home Food Preservation. That link is in our blog. That's something that I go to a lot because, and then the Canning Rebels is another group that we're both in, Rebel Canners, and then Canning Simple Recipes. And let me tell you, there's people in here. If you question something, they will kick you out. I think it's the Rebel Canners is the one that's the worst. So just I tread lightly in a couple of these groups
because they specifically say in there, this ain't the FDA. We don't do shit that way. And I'm like, come on. Like, okay. So I'm like, that's why I'm like, I ain't saying nothing unless it's something's like, I mean, I've never seen anybody jump off the cliff of canning yet. So far, just about everything I've seen done, the old people in Eureka have done, except for the cream cheese. They didn't have cream cheese back then. But, I mean, it's up to your comfort level. We are not the Fauci people that are going to mandate shit to you. We are going to tell you what can happen when shit goes wrong, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you definitely want to make sure that you are taking precautions when you're canning, especially if you have not
this
ever
person
canned before.
Bear. That sounds crazy, but it's just a meat bear.
Mm-hmm.
People ask questions in here, and they help get direction and stuff like that.
And some of the recipes in there are really good.
Really good.
They're really
right
good.
Now what's like trending in here is, I just saved this recipe, this Jack Daniel's sauce. I just saved it to my hard drive. But the Better Than Campbell's Better Than Campbell's tomato soup is trending. Everyone's trying it. Everyone's canning their potatoes are coming up. I have a whole bunch of potatoes I need to can as well. But they'll show you what they can, and it's kind of the rule of thumb that if you're going to post a recipe that you canned, you got to post the recipe too. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Don't seem to get that.
So are those the hard-boiled eggs?
This one was the hard-boiled eggs. I'm like, technically it's a protein and like meat, but I ain't gonna tell them what to do.
Mm-mm. Hopefully they just did it correctly.
Hopefully this person, they showed all their ribbons for what they just won. Let me see. Where's that darn chicken Alfredo sauce, or not chicken Alfredo sauce that I wanted to make? See, like they'll can stuff with the potatoes with the skin still on it, and that's kind of like a high botulism risk, just because of the dirt. That even though you may scrub them, the spores from the botulism could still be impregnated like inside the peels. But I have seen the old people in Eureka can them with the peels on, and they live to like 100. So just caution.
Yeah, be careful if you're going to do that.
I ain't going to chase you. That's what Dr. H says. But I am going to tell you, don't jump off a cliff. There was one lady in here, she was canning jalapenos, and she canned like 20 pounds of jalapenos or something like that. And then she said she washed her hands, then she went to the potty, and her vagina got caught on fire.
Definitely. That I will say, we've had multiple times where I've had to open up the whole house, and I'm like, all right, babe, you cannot do peppers again today because the whole house will smell like peppers. He does wear gloves when he's cutting them up and he's doing them all, but oh my gosh. And he always waits till I'm like on a Zoom to do the peppers. Like, I can't tell you how many times Nicole and I have been on a Zoom for something, and I'm like, the whole house just starts to smell like basically pepper spray.
Right. There's another trending recipe on the site. It's the SpaghettiOs. That what I want to try too is the SpaghettiOs. Like hundreds of people have made it.
I've seen that one. I haven't tried it yet, but I've seen it and it looks interesting.
Mm-hmm. It looks like low risk. You're not supposed to do noodles just because they'll just disintegrate, but they tell you how to do it. So I did want to try that one. That one seemed like not too off the cliff for me. But they post like like 100 times a day. New posts. Let me do the Alfredo sauce.
There's so many posts in there. So Erica just made a comment about seeing a post, and I've probably seen that same post, Erica, about filling your empty jars with water for water storage. Yeah, and of course you'd want to boil the water later if you use it, but it is a great suggestion, especially if you've got a ton of jars that you aren't using. Go ahead and put the water in it. Then that way you've got something were to happen, you've got water, plus you're not just storing empty
People
jars.
in Texas could have used that when everything froze over.
Exactly, most definitely. So this is the Alfredo.
There's some grandma that showed everyone how to do it too. Her post went viral.
Yep, that Troy and Andrea, that's the caramel sauce that I was talking about.
It's dulce de leche is what it is.
Yeah, and it's really sauce. It is really good. I meant to grab a jar of that, but it's really good to just dip apples in it. Last winter when I made it, I was using a little bit in my coffee, so I would make my own like caramel macchiato with it.
Yeah,
yeah, it's pretty darn tasty.
Yeah, it looks really easy. I think the high sugar content in it makes it low risk.
Yeah, I haven't had any issues with it. But when you open it up, you definitely want to put it in the refrigerator. You don't want to leave it out. You want to refrigerate it once you open the jar. And that's with most canned, with any canned food, you're going to want to put it, anything that's left over, you're going to want to put it in the refrigerator. I will try and find, I don't have it right now, but I'll try and find the recipe for the salsa that my husband's been making. It's actually really good. I've never been a fan of canned salsa, even store-bought. I'm not big on canned store-bought salsa, but this recipe that he found is actually really good, and I think you guys would like it. Yeah, there's so many different ideas that you can get from these Facebook groups. It's absolutely amazing what the stuff that people are doing. And again, not all of it is, approved. And we're not going to tell you not to do it, but just be careful with it. One last thing that I did want to go over with you guys is the signs and symptoms of botulism poisoning. So difficulty swallowing, muscle weakness, double vision, droopy eyelids, blurry vision, slurred speech, difficulty breathing, difficulty moving eyes, vomiting, nausea, stomach pain, diarrhea. So the symptoms they can result in muscle paralysis. If untreated, the disease can progress and symptoms will worsen, causing full paralysis of some muscles, including those that are used to breathe, muscles in your arms, legs, trunks, torso, chest, abdomen. Foodborne botulism symptoms usually begin in the first 18 to 36 hours after eating the contaminated food. Botulism poisoning is diagnosed by brain scan, spinal fluid examination, nerve and muscle function tests, tensilism tests for, I can never say this one, myasthenia gravis, lab tests for toxins or bacteria that cause botulism. None of those are going to be fun tests to have to do, and they need to be done right away to be able to see if you have botulism poisoning. So you want to definitely make sure that you are, being very, very careful. Most doctors will treat it with the drug, with a botulism antitoxin, which helps to prevent the toxin from causing more harm, but it does not heal or reverse anything that's already happened. So it's just, you want to be very, very careful with it. And Troy and Andrea, I absolutely love these groups as well. It's not be sure what dry canning is. Dry canning, I've seen that people are doing dry canning with the potatoes. I've never personally done it. Have you done it, Nicole?
No, I'm a little afraid to. I put everything in the pressure canner. But I have seen them do it with dried beans in the oven. which technically would work because honestly, the oven just really does nothing more than just create a vacuum in the jar, and the beans are already dry. So I would feel like that is low risk, but I wouldn't really try it. I mean, I wouldn't feel comfortable trying it with I don't know what the hell my family is just doing out there with that sound. With the potatoes, because there's such a risk of botulism like with that. So I don't know. I mean, that's why I was gonna get the freeze dryer. I'm like, I mean, there's also vacuum sealing your jars, like, because you can use the freeze dried food that you do with the freeze dryer, put it in the jars and vacuum seal it like that too. But I mean, potatoes, I'm not there yet. Not there yet.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start easy with the Alfredo sauce.
I've thought about doing the cream cheese because, when it goes on sale.
Right. I put it in the freezer.
Yeah, I put it in the freezer too, but it doesn't always turn out the same way when you defrost it.
No, it's not as creamy, like smooth, creamy, spreadable. But I mean, I typically, when we use cream cheese, we use it in a recipe. So
yeah, and in the Alfredo sauce, it is what I usually use it in when we make our own Alfredo sauce. So I'm definitely interested in making that Alfredo sauce. But we do when we do any kind of canning, or not canning, just preserving in like dry beans or anything like that, we do use a vacuum sealer attachment. You can get them on Amazon for mason jars. They're pretty cool to use. I will pull that up really quick. If you guys haven't already seen it, it's super easy. That I want to say the last time I bought one, it was like $25. It was pretty cheap.
What was it?
The vacuum sealer for mason jars.
I think it's in our list, like mason jar must-haves with all the cool mason jar accessories.
I think it is. Yeah, this is the one that we've got. I'll drop the link for you, Nicole, to drop it in. It's like $25.99, and we've used this thing. It's just in our cabinet above me, and we use it like almost daily because we do we've done so many different things in the freeze dryer, and we save a lot of stuff in regular canning jars because they're easy. Like we've done green beans, we've done corn, we've done potatoes, we've done carrots, just so many different things. And it's super easy to be able to use. But if you want to pop this one up, this is the one that I've got that we use all the time. And it comes in a little box. And
sorry, my internet is dragging. It's like not doing it.
Mine is always dragging, and we have Starlink.
And you have Starlink. How is that possible?
I don't know. Last week Starlink went a worldwide system crash like an hour and a half before.
Well, yeah, because Elon Musk wouldn't give them access to like Russia or Ukraine information, so they shut it down.
Yep, it was ridiculous. I was freaking out last week because I'm like, am I even going to be able to be on the podcast?
Oh my gosh. Like today at work, IT runs into my office. They're like, is your computer okay? And I'm like, what's going on? What just happened? Are we under a cyber attack? And he's like, internet's down everywhere. Productivity is stopped. And I'm like, I'm on my hotspot, bro. I don't like my productivity has not stopped. I'm going to finish this report. It was a catastrophe. Everyone was freaking out. No internet. Internet's important.
It is. Well, for my work, we took down one of our websites over the weekend, and IT did it before they were supposed to do it. So it's caused all kinds of issues this week. Like, what are you guys thinking? But this is the mason jars. There's other ones out there, but this is the one that I personally have, and it works fantastic. It comes with both attachments for the small jars and for the big jars, and it charges with like the USB type charger. It works. They work great. We use this thing almost every day when we pop we pop something off, we pop the top off of something, even if it's something that I've canned and we've used like, this is chicken broth. If I only use like half of this, I would then put the lid back on, use that, and then put it in the refrigerator so that I know the seal is, that it's a proper seal. And with these, I will reuse when I'm doing something that's dry, I will reuse the lid. I just won't reuse the lids when I'm canning something. I've seen another thing with the lids is there's a bunch of different brands out there. So check the reviews before you buy them. I know there's a brand that they sell at the Dollar Tree store, and like Dollar General. There's a couple of different brands that are sold there that are pretty cheap, but they're not good. So be very careful with the lids that you're buying. You want to make, because it takes a lot of time to process salsa, to process foods. I mean, it's especially if you're doing meats. Could be a lot of money that is being wasted just because you bought a cheaper brand of lids. So be very careful with that as well. I don't know if there's any more questions, Nicole. I think we got all the questions that popped up. Here, I was thinking this would be like a 30-minute podcast, and we're almost an hour in. I think we got
totally on mute. I said we always start off thinking, oh, we could probably finish this episode in 30 minutes, and then we really start like getting into stuff. And we're like, oh, this and that, and blah blah blah.
And then here we are, 45 minutes to an hour in. I think I'm pretty sure we got all of the questions. But if anybody wants us to do, something on freeze drying, let us know, or even dehydrating, because that's. Have you been dehydrating, Nicole? I think you have.
I did a whole bunch of lemon and lime slices for my iced tea, and a whole bunch of fruit like apples, because my apple tree is getting ready. Like it's starting to drop apples. I'm getting ready to can a bunch of applesauce and apple pie filling, and then some apple juice.
That'll be good. We did last week. We did pears because our pear tree is ready. So we did a whole bunch of pears. I got
4 pears off my pear stick.
Hey, but that's
probably
better than
more. If it wasn't for the damn squirrels.
Yeah.
So, folks, we're going to wrap everything up. Thanks for joining us once again. And I want to remind everyone, we have our new supplement line out. It's called frontlinedefensesupplements.com. I'm like, is that your dog or my dog? I can't even tell anymore.
It's mine.
And, it's my kids laughing in the background. It's frontlinedefensesupplements.com, and it was designed by frontliners for our patients. We specialize in nootropic mushrooms as well as an entire wellness, fitness, beauty line and everything like that. Use coupon code Frontline for 10% off, or you do subscribe and save and you'll get 15% off. And make sure to subscribe for free to our Substack called Dark Influence. The book's going to be dropping next month. And we're going to talk all about Team Halo and shots heard around the world and all the deception we found from these social media groups that were actually being paid by big organizations, and it was all being filtered through a nonprofit. So lots and lots of good stuff coming out there. We just exposed how they try to take down a small American business. It was a pizza place. I'll show you guys the Taste of Sicily. It's a small pizza place, and because the owners were pushing back on mask mandates in restaurants and closing down their business, they went and bombarded their Google reviews and tried to get them shut down, tried to get them in trouble with the health department. So it's just ridiculous. And these are supposed to be healthcare professionals. You're supposed to be nurses and doctors and people like that you're supposed to trust with your life. And they're attacking a pizza place. I know that they came after me because, the aggression that we dealt with the Tamara Drock case in Florida. And I'm like, she had days to live. I'm pulling out every guerrilla warfare tactic I have, so, that's different. Someone's got a stub toe now. They're all dying. But do I need to perform surgery? No. So that's it, folks. Okay, we're gonna have to go because my children are just screaming at this point. Bye, guys.
Have a good night, guys.